the Knit and Grace podcast. This is episode 23. Welcome back if you're a returning viewer. If you're new here, my name is Mia and I'm the maker behind Knit and Grace. And on this little corner of the internet, I get up to all things fiber arts related, primarily knitting, but I also do quite a bit of sewing and occasionally some crochet. I tend to put out episodes in the traditional project recap style, making journals, and fiber travel vlogs, and I am passionate about making clothing that fits you no matter your size. So if this sounds like something you might be interested in, grab a cup of something cozy and settle in for today's episode. So today I do have a traditional project recap vlog or podcast, if you will. And so we're going to go over all of my finished objects since the last episode. So everything that I finished in the month of April, as well as my whips and some upcoming plans. But before we get into that, I would like to give a huge thank you to a viewer of the channel, Laura, who recently gifted me 2 patterns from my Ravelry wish list. So she gifted me both the Colette Tee by Sari Nordland, as well as the Port Sweater by Ozetta. And thank you so much, Laura, and thank you for your kind words and your message that you sent over on Ravelry. Really appreciate it. And, it's viewers like you all that I make these episodes for. Otherwise, I would be just screaming out into the void. If you yourself are interested in supporting the channel in any sort of monetary way, you can look in the description below for my Ravelry wish list, as well as my Ko-Fi if you'd like to buy me a coffee. And of course, simply just subscribing, liking, and commenting on these videos to make sure that others are able to see them is support enough. So let's go ahead and get right into it with what I'm wearing today, which is also my first finished project, therefore it is a project spotlight. Okay, so what am I wearing today? Today I am wearing the Avenue Tee by Tori Yu, which was a recently released pattern in the month of April. Yes, in the month of April. So this one was just released and I had the pleasure of testing this beautiful tee for Tori. It was my first time knitting one of Tori's patterns and also my first time testing for her, so it was really exciting. And Tori and I have been really friendly for a while now, but especially since we met at Rhinebeck a couple of years ago, and I've just been kind of waiting for the right pattern and the right time to come up that I could test for her, so I'm really excited that I was able to finally do that. And this is my finished sweater. As always, if you are new here, I will be putting my FO pictures right here, and also all of the information to my Ravelry project page is linked in the description down below. So anything that I forget will be in there, and then of course you're always welcome to leave a comment. So in terms of the construction, and as always, I'm always looking down at my notes, the top is knit top down seamlessly. It has a contiguous construction, so it does have a saddle shoulder, and then you begin a series of raglan shaping to shape the sleeve cap into then the final body raglan. And I apologize for the frog in my throat. I am dealing with allergies today. And then you split for sleeves and you knit the body. The fit is meant, it does have two views, so it has the v-neck, which I knit. It also has a crew neck view, and the body is just knit a straight sort of boxy, loose fitting, kind of classic tee style. So there is no body shaping, and then it does feature a slightly longer sleeve, which I personally love for my arms. I will note, I'll talk about the yarn right now so that you all can see. If you notice that the neckline is popping up a little bit in the back, that is not that's not an issue with the pattern. It is the yarn that I used. And so the yarn that I used for mine is the Durum Natura Candide, which is a wool cotton blend, and I just haven't had a chance to steam it after I have blocked it. So it still has the very sort of stiff blocking crease in it, and that's why the neck is popping out a little bit. But that is, you know, not a feature of the pattern. It's not an issue with the pattern. It's just the yarn is a little stiff around the neck at the moment since I haven't steamed it out after blocking. But back to the pattern. With regard to the pattern, as I mentioned, it does have two views. It has the V-neck as well as the crew neck, and it is written for fingering to sport weight yarn. So I used a sport weight for mine. I think that Tori used both a light fingering and a heavier fingering for her two samples. So you can really get a pretty good range of yarns in there for the gauge, which is 24 stitches on US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles. There are 9 sizes available, so it's going to span a finished bust size of 32 inches all the way up to 64 inches, and it is meant to be worn with 1 to 4 inches of positive ease. The schematic is available to you before purchasing, which I always appreciate. A schematic in general is always obviously appreciated, but especially when it's available to you before purchasing so that you can really understand how the sweater is going to fit your body, and you can really understand, you know, sort of your proper sizing and pick all of that out before you even purchase the pattern. And then the pattern itself is a very simple layout. It is a sort of a single column, kind of very simple layout. I'm thinking of like other designers that have a similar layout, like Sari Nordlund, or, you know, Petite Knit has a very similar layout where it's just kind of very clean, very simple. I do love Tori's writing style. She provides just enough content without too much information, so I personally like that. I think I can get overwhelmed when there's a lot of information thrown at me. Partially because I'm a fairly experienced knitter, but also I think with my ADHD sometimes it's just like if there's too many words on the page, it can be a little daunting. So I really love Tori's style. It's straight to the point, and it gives you the pointers wherever you need to without sort of getting into too much detail. But I will say that that would, you know, in terms of the pattern layout, depending on how you prefer your pattern layout, for me, I did have to very much mark my sizes to make sure that I didn't get lost in the pattern, because personally I just find like a 2-column layout to be a little bit more visually, a little easier for me to navigate visually, and that's just a personal preference. So but you know, actually loved her writing style, which is really the more important part when it comes to the pattern itself. So my sweater, as I mentioned, I did knit it in Durum Natura Candide. This is my first time using this yarn. Absolutely love it. if you are familiar with Wool Dreamer's Sauna, it has a similar fiber content with the wool to cotton ratio. However, with this one, I know the wool is processed a little bit differently and the cotton is a recycled cotton. So it actually gives it's pretty strong for a woolen spun yarn. I didn't have any issues. In terms of knitting it, I didn't feel like I was potentially going to break the yarn, which I have done with the Sauna. Also, I didn't find any guard hairs in this at all. Like the way that it's sort of the wool part is processed, it's very wool processed, it's very soft. So while the Sauna, like if it is really hot, I could feel a little prickly. This I know I could wear in like the dead of summer and still feel good. And actually, another thing of this is I think that the way that the fibers are processed too, it gives it a very, not only a dry hand, but when you block it, it actually feels like terry cloth. It doesn't look like terry cloth. So, you know, it looks very neat and finished and all that, but it kind of feels like terry cloth, which for me, I'm kind of a little excited about because I'm like in the dead of summer when you're sweating and you need something to sop up your sweat. TMI. I think this will be a perfect yarn. So I'm really excited to knit future projects with this yarn, but that is the yarn that I used. With regard to my sizing, I chose to knit the 5th size, yes, the 5th size, which corresponds to a 48-inch bust, and then I chose to add in a 2-inch bust dart, and so that is just my preference. I usually, with tees or anything that's going to be a little bit more cropped, which I consider anything either high hip or cropped length to be a cropped length for me, I tend to put in bust darts. If I'm knitting something full length for me, depending on what the pattern is, sometimes I will put in a bust dart, sometimes I won't. But for a high hip or a cropped length, I will throw that in. And I will put a tool for you all with regard to how to put in bust darts and calculate your bust darts for patterns that don't provide that instructions below. I'm just lucky enough to have knit a lot of patterns that have bust darts in it, so I usually just like find a pattern that like has the same gauge and I just use those instructions, so I don't have to do any math. But the math is not very complicated at all to do. I did knit it on the recommended US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles, so I did get gauge on that. And in terms of my modifications, aside from the bust dart, I did shorten the sleeve by 1 inch so that it would hit me exactly as intended. So Tori intends it to hit a little bit below the midpoint of the bicep. So I just shortened it by 1 inch so that it hit me at the same size or at the same place as hers. And then the body I actually knit exactly as written, which it is written to be a cropped body, but for me it is a high hip. So that's sort of my sweet spot for tees. I like it to be high hip so that, you know, when I'm sitting or, you know, running around or whatever it might be in the summer, I'm not aware of the fact that I might be exposing, you know, my belly or whatever it might be. So that is that. In terms of the test knitting process, since this was my first time testing for Tori, it is done via email and via Google Docs. So you get access to the Google Docs whereby you can send comments to Tori, and others will be able to see those comments as well, and additionally interact with Tori via email. I actually kind of like that. Sometimes when you're in a test where there's like a big chat, it can be a little overwhelming. However, a few of us that were actually testing it together did form our own little group chat, and that we're all, you know, we're all friends. And so we formed a little group chat and we had, you know, sort of, we worked along with each other, and I think that that was nice because it was a much more intimate group. I think it was like 5 or 6 of us at the most, and then it's also nice too because then we can all just talk about other things and not just the test. So it's a really nice way to build community, because I think, you know, when you're in a test group chat, it's really great to build community as you're all knitting together, but you know, sometimes it's a little harder to get deeper because you're really meant to only be talking about the test knit. And you know, this way, because we're all friends, we've all knit a lot of the same patterns, and we're all knitting a lot of future same patterns, we were all able to kind of just, you know, keep each other going. And as people finished at different rates, we were still able to have different conversations. So that was really nice. And so yeah, so that is the Avenue Tee by Tori Yu. So I have a feeling that this is going to be a long one because I've already been talking for like 16 minutes. So hopefully, you know, you use the timestamps available to you if you want to stop along the way, and you know, you've got some knitting with you. So in terms of finished projects, I'm going to go in order of when I finish them. And my next finished project, dun, 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 is my Mariner sweater by Aimee Sher of Aimee Sher Makes. Let's see. There we go. That should be in the screen. And I love it. I knit View A. I believe View A is the one with, sorry, I'm like, I really should have steamed this. View A. View A, I believe, is the one with the button. View B is you can make it without the buttons. So I did choose to do the button placket, and it has a contrast button placket. Now, these buttons are too small. I had ordered temporary buttons because I was waiting for the buttons that I wanted to come in from the Aimee Sher Makes web shop to come in. And so I ordered these temporary buttons, which are too small. And they're just anchor buttons. I'll try to put in a picture of them for you all. And then I ordered the buttons from the Aimee Sher Makes site, which I will have a link to their web shop below, and it is an affiliate link. If you click on it, I will get a little bit of a kickback, but no cost to you if you shop. So I did get in the buttons that I ordered, so that's one of my acquisitions that you'll see early. And when I ordered them, I knew that technically they were large based on the pattern, because I think the pattern says you should use either a 20 or 23 millimeter button, and I think this was like 25 millimeters or something like that. It wasn't like crazy off, but it was bigger. And when I got these, I'm like, yeah, these are way too big. But I'll show you. Again, still the anchor theme button. Oh yeah, so there, it's focusing a little bit. So still the anchor, but now these are too big. So I'm gonna have to go on a hunt to get properly sized buttons for this one, but it is finished, and for now the buttons are working. Another thing that I thought about is potentially using the bigger buttons and just sewing the placket down. That might be an option if I feel like they don't look too big on the sweater, but I think I might actually want to get some smaller buttons. But this is the sweater. Hopefully I will have put in some pictures already from, oh my god, I'm gonna have to change very soon. Actually, let me do that now. Okay. You know, it's funny because I wore that sweater like all day one day when I did the photo shoot, and you don't have any issues, but I think, you know, sometimes when you're just like moving around and flailing around like I am over here chaotically, you just have to change. We will talk about this because this one's actually one of the next finished objects. But back to my Mariner. Where was I? The button saga. The button saga aside, this is the Mariner sweater by Aimee Sher, and hopefully you will have seen some pictures from my photo shoot here. There are plenty more pictures that I still need to edit. Symphony, who is on Aimee's team, and I have become very close friends, and we live very close to each other, and we actually work very close to each other. We work a few blocks away, so we see each other pretty often. And one day we decided to go to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens and have a little photo shoot, and so those are the pictures that you're seeing. So with regard to my Mariner, the Mariner is knit bottom up, and it has these beautiful stripes, And like I mentioned, you have the option of having a button placket or not having the button placket. It is a boxier fitting top, so I actually chose to, which Aimee suggests, if you want a more traditional fitted top, you can size down one. So I actually knit size C, which is the third size. My typical Aimee Sher make size is size D. So this one gives me maybe like 2-3 inches of positive ease. So, which is sort of my preferred fit versus the actual fit intended, I think is a little bit larger. I should have written that down. I will put it in here somewhere in terms of how much positive ease Aimee actually intends for you to have. And as always, I did do the 2-inch bust dart. One thing that I did different with my bust dart though, because I wanted the actual sort of stripes to go up to my bust, I put the bust darts above the last stripe. So typically you would end your stripe about mid bust, just like below, and then put in your bust dart. So then you have like a bigger sort of bit of fabric that doesn't have any stripes. And so what I chose to do was pretty much work my stripes to my underarms more or less, and then do the bust dart. So that essentially gave me one extra stripe than I would have if I had knit it properly to my size. And yeah, I did shorten the body by 1 inch. So I just shortened that by knitting less rounds after the ribbing before starting my stripe. And I shortened the sleeves by 3 inches. It is meant to have sort of a longer sleeve. You see, it actually has, you do block out the ribbing on your sleeve. Mine didn't block out all the way. I mean, it did, but it just cinched back in a little bit more. So I did shorten the sleeves by 3 inches because I don't like a long sleeve. I have sensory issues with bagginess around my wrists. So I tend to knit my sleeves bracelet length or just past bracelet length so that when I bend my elbows, they will ride up to about 3/4 if I knit bracelet length, and then probably just at my wrist if I knit it a little past. And so that's what ended up happening with this one. It's just a little past my wrist, so when I bend my elbows, it does not give me baggy wrists. So, you know, problems when you have sensory issues. The yarn that I used is Durham Natura Penelope, which is a wool silk blend. And I did purchase this from Aimee's shop, and I did receive a discount as part of the testing process. I was originally meant to test this sweater, and unfortunately I wasn't able to sort of meet the commitment, and I finally got around to knitting it and finishing it, and I love it. The main color is Crepuscule, which is this gray color, and the white is the Orgeat, which is the cooler white. There are 2 whites that are available, natural whites because they're not whites, that are available from Penelope, and so this is the cooler grayer tone white, which I thought obviously would go better with the gray fabric. And then there is a creamier white, which actually is the one that Aimee used for their sample in that. Now, I absolutely loved this. I knitted on the recommended US 6 needles. I did not swatch. I did nothing because at that point the test was over. I was like, well, I don't have to test this. I'm just going to go for it. And it worked. But this is kind of a testament to when you know a designer and you knit their designs quite a bit. I did not do a gauge swatch, and I knit a completely different size, and still the fit is beautiful. So I absolutely love it. I was able to get a little bit of wear out of it before it got properly warm here. So I am excited to put it away for now and bring it back out in the fall. Okay, the next finished object that I made, I knit in a frenzy because when I was finishing the Mariner, As I mentioned, Symphony and I went to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, I always want to say botanical, and primarily to do the photo shoot for the Mariner, but I also brought my Avenue tee with me, which was great. And then I just had in my head that I wanted like a little bit of a French girl vibe because I was knitting a Mariner style pullover. And so I knit a tiny scarf. And so if you watch the last episode of the podcast, so part 2 of episode 22, I knit a couple of kerchiefs for myself and for Symphony actually. And the contrast color that I used was this Flora and Fauna Farms Serotonin, which is a DK weight yarn. And so I still had just over 50 grams left. It was like 50.7 grams. And so I decided that I was gonna cast on a tiny little scarf. And so let's see, there we go. Hopefully that is focusing. And this is the Nova scarf by Not Perfect Knit, and I am obsessed. So this scarf actually, I was introduced to this pattern through Haley of the Knit Weekends when I was in Nashville, and I got to wear her Nova scarf. And so I decided that I was going to make one for myself. I chose to knit the larger size, so I did use the recommended US 6 or 4mm needles for this, and I didn't do any gauge swatching or anything at all. So what the pattern does is it has you do a set of increases, and then it has you work a set of even rows, and then it has you decrease. And so all along you're doing this I-cord slip stitch edge. So it's literally you cast on, you cast off, and the whole thing is done. You just have 2 ends to weave in. And so what I did was, once I finished my increases, I weighed my yarn to see how much yarn I used so that I knew how much I needed to have left over for the decreases. And then I worked the middle section. And so I think for the middle section, I forget how many repeats it is. It might have been like 16 repeats or something like that, but I made it to 1 repeat shorter than the sort of instructions tell you to, just based on the fact that I knew I needed to conserve the weight. And then I finished it off, and I had maybe like a 1.5 foot left of yarn. So this is completely used up, which is super exciting, and I got 3 projects out of 1 skein of yarn. And so, what to say about this? Yeah, it ended up blocking to the size of the largest one anyway, because I did kind of just like aggressively block it out, and I absolutely love it. And it was the perfect little thing to have around my neck when it was cooler in the morning, and then once it got warm, you can just tie it on your bag like a little bag scarf and just keep on moving with your day. So next up, I have a pair of socks. We only have 1 pair of finished socks in April. So if you watched my last podcast, you know I'm a little behind on my mom's sock knitting, and I'm a little ahead on my sock knitting. But this next finished object is a pair of Wisteria Bloom socks by Aimee Sher. And this is what they look like. They have this beautiful picot edge, and I love them. So I knit I knit these socks in Little Fiber Co. in the Flock colorway. So this is Pairs Well with Friends is the name of the colorway, and it's on their merino sock base. And so this was a sock kit. So the Pairs Well with Friends is this sort of variegated pink color, and then it had the contrast color. And I picked this up at Flock in 2024, and with the intention of actually knitting this pattern. So I did eventually knit it, and I absolutely love how they turned out. So I knit size B, which corresponds to a 64 stitch sock on US 1 or 2.25 millimeter needles, which is my traditional sort of sock yarn. And yeah, so with this pattern, I knew going into it that I didn't have enough of the contrast color based on Aimee's recommendation. So what I did was I omitted some of the contrast in like detail on the inside. So I just started straight with the main color. So I omitted the contrast color on the inside. And then I did obviously the lace sequence in the contrast color. And then I started out the heel in the contrast color. And so what I did was I did my heel flap in the contrast color, and then I didn't do my heel turn in the contrast color because I wanted to have enough for the toe. But then when I got to the toe, I kind of liked the way that it looked with the sort of continuous color toe. So I didn't end up using it for the toe. So I could have done the whole heel flap and turn in the contrast color, but you know, this is what they look like. So that's how I edited or sort of modified the pattern based on wanting to conserve some yarn. So I do have a little bit left still of the purple, and then the main color Pairs Well with Friends, I still have like half a skein left. The only modification that I did other than the color modification is I did do a reinforced slip stitch heel, and that is just because I feel like that fits me the best, as well as I wear my socks in boots. I've not ever worn through one of my socks heels yet, but I think that also just going the extra mile of doing the reinforced heel probably helps. And so I think the pattern just calls for a continuation of the rib pattern into the heel. So yeah, I absolutely love how they turned out. I do have like 50 grams left of this. And so I was thinking, so we went up to the cabin a couple of weeks ago, and I'll have a little bit of vlog footage of just like life over the past few weeks later on. And I was blocking these while I was there. And my mom, just like every time she walked by them, she was like, ooh, these socks are pretty. Ooh, look at that picot edge. Ooh, look at this lace. Oh, that color is so pretty. And I'm just like, I get the hint. You want the socks. These are not going to her, but she wants these socks. Now, this is my dilemma. I only have 50 grams left of this yarn. So I could definitely, I have plenty of sock yarn in my stash that I could find a contrast color that pairs well with it. And knit her a sort of somewhat similar pair, right? But also one of my whips that I'll show you later is also sort of a little bit of a memory keeper for me. And I did want to incorporate the Pairs Well with Friends into that project because, again, it's a memory keeping project. So we'll see. I might just bite the bullet and knit the socks for her and not have any left over to put in my projects. Or I'm gonna knit the socks for her, the pattern itself. So I might just knit the pattern in a different sort of sock color or find something similar. I do have some similar looking colors in my stash that I can make for her. So we'll see if I decide to be a little selfish or if I decide to make my mom some matching socks. But that is a very long-winded way of saying that I finished the Wisteria Bloom socks by Aimee Sher Makes. And finally, we get to what I'm wearing. I know you have been sitting on the edge of your seat this whole time, like, when is she going to talk about it? I am wearing the Relax Tee by Aimee Sher Makes. I feel like maybe I'll title this episode like the Aimee Sher Stan episode. Because if it wasn't, I think everything is like either an Aimee Sher pattern or most things were purchased from the web shop. Anyways, y'all know how much I love Aimee and everything that they do. But the Relax Tee by Aimee Sher. This is a stunning tee. I am so obsessed. This is one of the few patterns that I did not test. I think the test went out about the time that the Mariner was released, and so between just knowing that life and school and work were a little hectic, I was also just like beating myself up a little bit about not having finished the Mariner test, so I decided not to sign up for the Relax Tee, and I was just beating myself up the whole time, but I knew that I would eventually knit it, so here we are. So the Relax Tee was released in March, at the end of March I want to say, and I have knit it as part of the Aimee Sher Makes 2025 Make Along. So I have those two finished objects are part of the Make Along that is running, and I'll have the link to the Make Along information below if you want to check it out. It's still going until June 15th maybe. I'll put in the actual date in here so that you all know. And yeah, so as soon as the pattern was released, I knew I needed to make it, and Tashi texted me and was like, so I just ordered yarn to make the Relax Tee. And I was like, good Lord. So this was in March. And I was like, well, I'm not ordering yarn because I just came back from Nashville where I just bought a lot of yarn. So I decided to go stash diving. And I'd had this Pearl Soho linen quill in my stash for quite some time, and so I said I would make it with them in my Pearl Soho. And so then they were waiting for their yarn to come, and then Aimee announced the Make Along. So then I was like, well, now we have to wait until the Make Along starts to actually start our sweaters. So I did manage to swatch before the Make Along started, and then I did cast on April 5th, which was the official start of the Make Along. So this is my sort of Make Along project. I won't be entering into the giveaways or anything like that, so I'm just kind of following along and you know, having fun with friends. But this is my project for the Make Along, and my battery is dying, so I should probably change that. Hopefully we're back in more or less the same spot. But I was mentioning, I started this on the day of the Make Along. So I knit size D, which is my typical Aimee Sher Makes size, and I incorporated a 2-inch bust dart, which is actually really cool. Hopefully we'll have already put in pictures. If I haven't, I will put in pictures after this part because I'm going to come very close to the camera and show you my boobs. But let's see, and please disregard the pajama pants. So this is the bust dart, which is really cool. So you can see that she has built it in based on your size between the purl ridges. So on the side it just starts with the purl ridge and then it expands out to the middle, and we're ignoring the fact that one of my nails popped off, and it gives you a nice even hemline. So I thought that the bust dart placement for this was so clever, and it fits really well. For this one, as I mentioned, I used Pearl Soho linen quill. The color is rosewood pink, so I've had this in stash for some time. I managed to knit it in 2 skeins. And so this is kind of one of the things that I love about Pearl Soho linen quill. Their skeins are very heavy. So I think both of mine came in at 104 instead of 100 grams. So like I think one was exactly 104, one was like 104 point something. And so I managed to knit the gauge swatch, which is up here. So I managed to knit the gauge swatch and the sweater out of just the 2 hanks of linen quill. So technically, based on yardage, this will take 2 full hanks of linen quill. but so even though my project page says it's 2 full hanks, it technically wasn't 2 full hanks. I still had a few grams left over. I think I had maybe like 2 grams left over after all was said and done. So it's perfect. Don't like kind of like say like, oh, Mia says linen quill is always heavy, because you know, you don't want to underbuy. But in my experience, linen quill is usually heavy, which is the complete opposite of the Durham Natural yarns. I will say, if you buy the Durham Natural yarns and you think that you're on the cusp, you have to make sure you buy that extra one, because they are all light. They're all light. I think the Penelope, I didn't have a single one that was over 49 grams. They all came in at like 48 and 48 point something. And then I know that the Candide as well was just shy. So I think I had bought like 100 and like however many grams I bought, I think I was 7 grams short of what the normal would have been. So I used up all of the Candide for that tea. So yeah, so good to know, right? So the Durham Natural yarn, they do tend to be a little bit lighter. You know, it's just industry standards. They might be a little over, a little bit lighter, but those tend to be a little bit lighter if you're ever kind of like on the cusp. Linen quill, on the other hand, is always heavy. So just keep that in mind. For this tee, I mentioned I put in the Best Star. I actually knit the sleeve 2 pattern, which on me hits me a little bit lower than intended, but I like a longer tee. I don't like quite elbow length all the time, but as you can see, it's just kind of below the middle of my bicep. I usually like my tees to be anywhere like from here to there, so that's kind of what that looks like. So I did knit the sleeves exactly as intended for a little bit of a longer sleeve on me, and then I omitted the body shaping so that I had more of a classic tee fit, and I just shortened the body by 1 inch, and so it gives me about the same fit in terms of where it's supposed to hit as the pattern calls. I think the pattern has you knit like a little bit longer than crop, but a little bit shorter than high hip. Mine hits me just at high hip, so it's just about there, and so that's why I only cropped it by 1 inch. Typically, for ASM patterns, depending on how I want the fit, I'll usually knit the cropped fit for a high hip length, and then I'll have to crop like 3 inches off of Aimee's full length for my full length. And that's just, you know, sort of knowing my body numbers. And so for this one, because it was a little longer than cropped, not quite high hip, I didn't have to crop it as much. It's long story short. I think that is all that I have to say about this one. I absolutely love it. I have already been wearing it, and I'm excited to knit another one. My mom has requested that I knit one for her, so I will be doing her measurements and all that. I need to find the time to do that, and I do want to film it for the channel, since I know that I have a few resources on sort of finding your perfect fit. So I'm thinking I might do a 4th video in the series. If you haven't already caught it, I will link the playlist below for you all. Okay. In the longest episode ever, we have the last finished object, and we have the Oslo Hat. So this one I don't have a finished object picture for. It is for Rob. I made it for his birthday, and this is my 7th time knitting this pattern. And so I will go ahead and fold it up. This has become kind of my go-to pattern to knit, especially for gifts, because there's no purling, and it creates this triple sort of fabric, triple layer fabric around the ears, which is really great in the winter here. We have cold winters, windy winters, and then, you know, you have your hat. So I knit the 4th size, which is the largest size, is the adult large, and that is the size I've always knit for him. And I use Barocco Merino 401 in the color 11277. So when you buy their colors, they're by numbers, but they do also have names if you go to their website. And so the name of this color is Evergreen. It's a really stunning color. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, so if it doesn't, I will insert a clip of what the color looks like. But it is a green color, but it's heathered, and so it has blues and browns in it as well, which I thought is really fitting for Rob. He has blue eyes, so he already has a blue Oslo hat. He wanted another Oslo hat, and so we got a green one. And so this is yarn that we picked up when we were in South Carolina on our annual trip earlier this year at the Frayed Knot. So I picked up this green for him, and then I picked up a blue for my brother-in-law to make my brother-in-law one for his birthday later this year. And yeah, it was perfect. It got 3 balls, so 150 grams, and I pretty much used the whole 3 balls up. I had just 7 grams left over, which will be perfect because then I can use that to put in my sort of memory project and then have completely used up the balls. But in terms of, so I talked about the size. I knit this on a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needle. Now, I recently pulled it up and I did see that there was a pattern update, but I don't know like what portion of the pattern was knit up. So because I knit this pattern, I pretty much know what to do. But I'll just pull up the pattern just to make sure I'm casting on the right number of stitches and then I'm knitting like the right length before doing like the fold over and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed that it says that you should use a US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter needle. And I don't know if that was always the case, and maybe I just use a US 4 and just like went with it. Because I do have US 3 short circular needles, so I don't know why I wouldn't have used a US 3. But from the first time I knit it, I've always used a US 4, and so since I kind of know the hat and I've now knit it 7 times, I kind of just go for it. And then it wasn't until I had downloaded the pattern this time and I just happened to glance through the needles that I was like, oh, it's a US 3, not a US 4. So I don't know if I'm using the right needles or the wrong needles, but my hats have always turned out to be perfectly fine in terms of sizing, and they have fit everyone really well. So that's just one thing to note, because I don't think I ever downloaded like an old version of the pattern. I just usually pull it up in my Rabbit app whenever I'm knitting it, since it's a pretty simple pattern. This is kind of like my go-to pattern because there's no purling. You're pretty much just knitting a long tube. So kind of like what the Musselburgh is to some people is kind of like what the Oslo is to me. I do eventually want to knit the Musselburgh, especially because it's like any gauge as opposed to this one, which is, you know, you need to use a DK weight. But because I do have a lot of DK weight in stash and I tend to buy a lot of DK weight, I never really felt the need to purchase the Musselburgh. But if I ever get maybe like a really nice skein of fingering weight yarn or something like that, I can probably see myself knitting that one up eventually. But yeah, one thing that I did like about the hat, so I think you all know I've been knitting a lot of socks because they're kind of like my lecture knitting, my reading knitting, while I read my textbooks. The hat is pretty much just like a big sock, which I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together before. And so I pretty much knit this whole thing during lectures and during readings. So I might be knitting a few more hats in the future and having them as gifts. I think so far, I think my dad and my brother still need one. So we might have to go stash diving and just knit a few more Oslos this year. we are on to the works in progress section. And I'm not sure if I will have put the vlog in before here or after here. So eventually you will have seen a vlog. But we have the works in progress. I have 2 projects to share with you today, which are my active whips. I do have more than 2 whips, but these are my active ones. So they're the ones I wanted to share with you today. And the first one I have in this Wool Warehouse net bag. And this is not how I normally store it. I just had everything in here because we went recently to the cabin, as I mentioned. And this was a great way for me to put everything together in one bag and just kind of pack it up. So this is the Sweet Shop blanket by Laura Penrose. And this is what it's looking like. You're not going to be able to see the whole thing on screen, so let's see. So that's what it looks like so far. And I am absolutely loving this project. So I am currently finishing the 4th row. So I'm probably to the point where I will be able to take actual proper whip pictures of it, since it's big enough to throw over the couch. And yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, this year I had finished another blanket, actually it's right here. So I had finished my woodland ripple blanket that I had been crocheting over 3 years using Sweet Sparrow Advents. And I really loved having sort of a long-term project that I could just pick up and put down. And, you know, as long as I finished a full row, which I always did, I didn't have to worry about like where I was and like figure it out. And I could always just like come back to it and pick it up really easily. And so with that, I was like, like I would love to have another blanket on the go. And I had knit the front of, I still have to knit the back of, the cushion that Laura released. Is it also the Sweet Shop cushion? It is. I will tell you right now. It is the Stella quilt cushion. So I had knit the front of the Stella quilt cushion, and I knew that the Sweet Shop blanket had a similar construction. And for this particular project, because I wasn't using like Advents, or I didn't want to use Advents, I was like, okay, I really enjoyed the concept and all of that, but I have a lot of scrap yarn. So I decided to go through all of my scraps and sort of put them together and kind of lay them out, the ones that made sense to go together. And so I decided that I was going to make a blanket, and I liked the idea of the Sweet Shop because, you know, you could use it for your Advent. So if you have like a color theme, which is really nice, but because I'm not necessarily using like a cohesive color theme, I liked the fact that I had a main color to sort of tie it all together. And so that's what I decided to do. So this is essentially using up all of my fingering and DK weight scraps, and I don't know how long it'll take me to do. I just kind of have it going on in the background. I started in January. We're now in May, and I've almost finished 4 rows. The size, so I cast it on, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So right now it's 7 across, which is between the small lap blanket and the larger lap blanket size, I think. And so I cast it on to 7 across for now, and then I'm gonna work my way up, and then to eventually be sort of like a lap blanket size. And then I might just keep going from there. So I might eventually like kind of keep blowing it out on the side or something like that, and just have it as like this beautiful throw blanket. And so what I've been doing is, as I knit it along, I've been pretty good. I've been weaving in my ends at the end of each row. And so as I knit it, I sort of pick out the colors that I want to make for like the next row, kind of like lay them out to see how I like the placement, and then I weigh my yarn before and after so I know how much yarn I'm using, and especially for those bits that maybe I have a little bit more that I can make multiple squares in, so I know exactly how much I use, and I'm keeping track of it on a spreadsheet, and also additionally, where the memory keeping part of it comes in is I'm keeping track of the projects that the yarn were originally knit in. So at the end of the blanket, I'm going to have all the information in terms of how much yarn I use and which yarns I used, but also sort of like this memory to look back on all the projects that I knit. And so I've just really been loving it. And yeah, I mean, I finally actually, so like this is my linen quill in peony pink that I had used to knit my Vertices Unite, and I think I also put it in my Straya maybe, and I put it in like a little like bag that I made, and I finally just used this up. I think I only had 1 gram left, and I think I have 2 of these. Yeah, I have 2 of them. There's another one down here. So it's just been really nice to go through and knit all of this. My oldest yarn in here is this one here, which is this green color. And this is Zitron Trekking, which I don't even know if they still make this yarn, but this is the oldest yarn that I have in here, and this yarn was purchased in March of 2009. So it's been really cool to just walk down memory lane. This is some Sonder Sunday Morning DK that I used in my citrine jumper. These 2 yarns right here that are right on top of each other. If you have been knitting along long enough to know about the honey cowl that hit us all really hard, I'm gonna say like 2012, 2013, you know, the infinity scarf trend and the honey cowl, those 2 I paired, they're Koigu that I paired together, so 1 solid and 1 variegated, to knit a honey cowl for one of my friends. So yeah, it's been really fun to go back and just have memories of, you know, awesome times, awesome projects, and kind of, you know, where I was and where I bought all this yarn from too, because, you know, some of these yarn shops that I bought some of these yarns from are no longer exist. So with regard to the pattern, I am knitting it on the recommended US 6 needles. I didn't swatch, but after I knit my first block, I am more or less on gauge. And I am using, let's see, I'm using Barocco Vintage DK in the color Mochi, there we go, as my main color. So this is a true white, so it is likely bleached. And the reason I chose the Vintage DK is because it is machine washable, and the large majority of the scraps that I'm using in the project are sock yarn. So, you know, I want to be able to toss it in the machine on gentle cycle if I want to. And so this is a 52% acrylic, 40% wool, 8% nylon. And it is, like I mentioned, machine washable and lay flat to dry. So really love it. Has 190 yards per 100 grams, and I just ordered a bunch of it off of Webs, and you know, kind of did the bulk discount or whatever. So I think it's like if you order over a certain number, you get like 20% off or whatever it might be. And so I've ordered 6 of them. So I think 5 should be enough for the size that I'm making, but I think if I'd ordered the 6, then I would have gotten the discount. So essentially the 6th one came out free, in addition with the pretty much covering the shipping. Excuse me. And then I think that also choosing more of a commercial yarn for the main yarn will be good if for whatever reason I do want to make this like really big and I ever need to buy more yarn in the future. I don't have to worry about like dye lots or things like that, since dye lots shouldn't differ too much, and especially because I'm using a white color. Okay, so we are coming to my second work in progress that I'm going to show you all today, which is in my Hohi & Co. BA bag, which I don't believe they make this style of bag anymore, which is tragic because it is so nice. But this is the Weekend Cami by Aimee Sher. And so this is a pattern that is not released yet. It will be released later this month. And I am not testing this. However, I did receive early access to the pattern as an affiliate. So I started my cami, and if you all watched my Nashville episode, you will know that this is yarn that I picked up in Nashville specifically for this project. And this, I'm just in love with this color. I'm in love with this yarn. I'm really excited to have this finished and be able to wear it. Specifically, when I thought about this, I thought about wearing this to the office under like my suit jackets. I have like, you know, my black suit jacket, and then I also have a really nice plaid suit jacket that's just like grays, but it has a subtle pink stripe within the plaid. So I thought that this would work really well, and it is, I mean, it is a bright pink, don't get me wrong, but on camera I feel like it looks much more like neon-y electric than it does in person. And so I'm knitting it in size D, 2-inch bust dart, my usual Aimee Sher sizing, and I am knitting the curvy view. So for this project, in addition, because it has negative ease, in addition to a bust dart, if you do need more room due to bust tissue, there is a vertical dart that you work as well. So there's a vertical dart and there's the horizontal bust dart. And I am working this one using helical knitting because I am using a hand-dyed yarn, which is Julie Aslan Fino, which I don't have my ball band with me, but I believe it's like a merino silk cashmere blend, and this yarn is absolutely stunning. And so I am doing that. So what I did was I knit the cups pretty much with the one sort of skein, not alternating, and then when I joined in the round, I joined in the second skein, and by the time I got to the horizontal bust darts, it was perfect because I was actually on a row that I needed to use like the original yarn, so, or the original ball I should say. So then I worked the bust dart in just the original since I was going back and forth, and then now I'm back to helical knitting the body. So I think also just because the ends just drive me insane personally, I might go in with this one and do some of my I-cord bind off also, so that once I'm done with it, I don't have to go back and do the I-cord bind offs, the edgings, and then that way I can kind of use up this one and then just knit the rest of the body in the one, so I don't have to worry about helical knitting the rest of the way. But so far I've been loving this project. It's also really small, so it's nice and compact, and now that I'm pretty much just knitting in the rounds, it's been good to have just one out with friends or whatever it might be. So that is the Weekend Cami by Aimee Sher. Okay, I need to try to wrap this up because Tashi is coming over today. And I'm filming this in the morning because I need to get this all up for you tomorrow. But we are on to acquisitions. As I mentioned, for the most part, this part of the episode will kind of come and go, depending on how I'm feeling. I think over time I will be sunsetting the acquisitions portion of the episode. But for right now, I'm continuing to share, and I do have some acquisitions, and probably also just because it'll help you understand the numbers. So in addition to the ASM make along, I am also participating in the knit along that's being hosted by Unit Toronto for Claudia's Lucretia pullover, and they have very kindly gifted me yarn, and I have finally swatched, and I will be casting on this weekend now that I kind of have my in the round easy peasy projects that I can kind of leave for my lecture knitting. I need a little bit more, something a little bit more complicated for my TV knitting. And so I will be knitting the Lucretia, and I have chosen to go with the same main color combo. So this is a pattern that is a top-down raglan. It's an oversized fit, and it has color work, which is really stunning. And I do have my swatch here. So the main colors, you use Sunday and Tin Silk Mohair for the main color, and so these are those. And so let's see, I'm using the same exact color. So this is color 1012 in the Tin Silk Mohair, and 1015 in the Sunday. And I'm really excited because this is my first time using both of these yarns. And then so for my contrast, I'm using the Senna's Garn Sisu in the color Terracotta. Oh, I wonder why this one has a color name and this one doesn't. And then the Knitting for Olive in the color Rust. So these are that. And so this is all together. And then I will show you my swatch. So this is what it's going to look like. And I think it's going to be absolutely stunning, and I'm really excited to start working this up. It'll obviously be something that I can't wear until the fall, but I just love the color work sort of touch that it has. And yeah, I'm really excited and grateful to Unit for sending me this stunning yarn. And so you will see this all as definitely a whip, maybe an FO, who knows, in the next podcast episode. But if you want to join in on that make along, you don't have to finish the project to be eligible for prizes, so whips are welcome. And the make along is running until sometime in June, so I'll also put in the information here in terms of those dates. And then my next acquisition, it's kind of a few little things, but my next yarn acquisition is some Harrisville Daylights. And so I picked this up because Aimee was having a sort of clear out sale of the Daylights recently as they were waiting for their new stock to arrive, you know, just kind of getting some of the older dye lots out. And so I did pick this up during the sale. I forget how much the sale was, but it was a really good sale. So I picked up 3 of these, and it will ultimately become the Campus Fest. And so I've been admiring all of the kind of friends in the Discord groups, all of their neutral beige versions, and I'm like, I need a neutral beige version. And then of course someone the other day then like posted their brown one, and I'm like, I need a brown one. So we're just gonna be knitting a lot of Campus Fests, but I picked up the Harrisville Daylights. This is the color Over Easy, so it's the one that has flecks of yellow in it. And then I also picked up buttons from the ASM site that will go with the vest. And I have also already swatched for this one. And so that's what my swatch is looking like. And so I don't know that I will get to cast it. No, I know I won't get to casting this on this month. But, so I guess this is kind of like acquisition / knitting plans in a way, because I'm showing you all my swatches as well. But besides, I have some knitting commitments, so I have the make along that I have to start for Unit, and then I also have sample knitting that's coming in the mail this month, waiting for that delivery soon. So This won't be casted on, especially because it's also going to get hot. But I also am going to have to do some math to figure out how I'm going to knit this up, because I was not able to get gauge. I sized down to like a US 5 to get gauge on this, and my gauge, like I got gauge pre-blocking, so the gauge for this is 22 stitches, is 4 inches. And once this yarn does bloom a lot, so once I wash the swatch, I think I'm getting like a 20.5 stitch gauge instead of the 22. And this is not something that I would feel comfortable going down beyond a US 5, which is 3.75 millimeter needle. And the reason for that is, one, it'll be hard for my hands, but also I think the fabric would be too dense. I kind of like it at this gauge, so I am going to have to do a little bit of math. I'll probably have to size down to the C, but I need to do the math to see if that is actually going to work out at my pre and post block gauge. So while I was also ordering, I did pick up my favorite my favorite scent of soak, which is Lacy, from Aimee's web shop. And since it is the summer, I use soak for all of my summer knits, because you shouldn't use lanolin wash on cotton. So just a thought. So I always have soak for my cotton based yarns, and I was running low, so I picked up some more. So yeah, I had picked up the soak and the yarn and the buttons, and that was fun. And I think that is it for that purchase. I do have one more purchase that I'm going to show you, but before I do that, I'm going to show you this swatch, since I'm kind of combining acquisitions and knitting plans. Since I mentioned at the top of the episode that the Colette Tea pattern was gifted to me, and this is a pattern that I do plan on knitting this summer, and I have the yarn for it. And if you haven't caught my spring knitting plans video, I'll go ahead and link it up above for you all. But I did swatch for the Colette Tea by Sari Nordlund, and this is what that swatch looks like. Now, I am going to have to size up, so this swatch should be 5 by 5 on the recommended needle size, and it's 4 by 4, and the recommended needle size is a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needle. So I'm going to size up a full millimeter to a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter needle. And I'm not going to do a full swatch because I know that this didn't bloom, so I kind of, you know, took my measurements pre and post blocking, and it really didn't bloom. So I think that if I'm going to do like a little mini swatch and then just take the measurements and see how it looks, and if it looks like it's going to be okay, and then I will just go ahead and cast on from there without doing the whole wash process and all of that. So, you know, it's not a test knit, so I can do what I want, and if it doesn't fit, well, it's on me. But the last acquisition I have to show you all is partially because of this yarn that I'm using, which, by the way, this is the Camellia Fiber Co. Flax. So it is an alpaca linen silk blend. It's very heavy. Picked up this Stanwood ball winder, and so this is the Stanwood ball winder large. And yeah, so I have been using a Knit Picks ball winder for a very long time, and it's pretty good, it's decent, but I have noticed that, you know, with heavier skeins, so like once I get like 75 grams on there, it kind of struggles a little bit for like that last 25 grams of yarn. And especially because I was actually balling up the Pheno from Julie Aslan, which is actually 115 grams. And then so between balling that one up and the struggle that I was having, and then also balling up the Camellia Fiber Co. yarn, which kept popping off because that's another issue. It doesn't have like grooves on it, so if the yarn is very soft and then once it gets to that point where the ball winder feels like it's heavy, it'll just pop full off the yarn winder. I was just like not having it. I did take it apart and I did clean it, and that did help a bit. But yeah, and then I do have the Lucca sort of horizontal ball winder, and I do like that one too. But I feel like sometimes like the motion of this motion, like the horizontal winding, can kind of just be a little much on my shoulder. And I knew that I needed to replace my Knit Picks one eventually anyway, so I decided to pick up the Stanwood Large. And I know that it's gotten really good reviews and people rave about it. And when I went on the Stanwood site, I think it was sold out, so it's like on back order right now. But I happened to be looking locally, and a yarn shop that's fairly close in upstate New York had it in stock, CC's Wool. And so I was able to order it, and because they're super close and they shipped you up UPS, I got it in like 2 days, which was really nice. So it is a high price tag ball winder. It also is a little bit, I think it's definitely heavier of a crank. So as I was like cranking it, is heavier. So I don't know that I would be able to like ball up a full sweater's quantity in one go. But because it is heavier, it is, you know, kind of that heavy duty and made for, I think it's made up to, like a 7-ounce ball, which I know 115 grams is 4 ounces. Yeah, so I had no problem. I actually ended up balling another Camellia Fiber Co. ball just to test it out. It did come out a little bit tight, but I think it's because it was like the first time. I read in the reviews that it takes a couple times for it to just kind of like loosen up and get going. And then the nice thing is I didn't lose my center pull, which will be nice for a pattern like the Colette tee where I have to knit holding 2 strands. So that is my last acquisition for today. Holy moly, this is the world's longest episode. So hopefully you've either gone away and come back, or you've stuck it out this far, and you know, if you have, thank you so much. We will get to the numbers. So as always, I will have the numbers here on the screen so you all can read along, and we will get into it. As a reminder, the in category is going to be any yarn that has come in, as well as any yarn that has been destashed would be subtracted from the in numbers, and the out numbers is simply showing any yarn that I have knit up for finished projects. So my 2 whips will not be included in these totals, just the actual numbers for the projects that I finished in April. So in April, we brought in quite a bit of yarn, but again, it's mostly because of the unit yarn since we are holding yarn double. But we brought in 6,161 yards worth of yarn, and we were able to knit up 3,637 yards worth of yarn. And so again, like this isn't like all yarn that was knit in like the actual month, because some of these projects had started before the month obviously, but again, because I only count them in the month that I finished them, that is the yarn out. So I'm really excited. So that brings us to a positive intake of 2,524 yards for the month. So for the year, that's going to give us a intake of yarn of 17,852 yards. Finished projects is 9,945 yards. And that gives us a total positive into stash of 7,907 yards. So not terrible, given that we're about halfway through the year. We will see how things go. There is no real plans for buying new yarn for the summer. I think, like I mentioned, all of my projects that I have lined up for the summer, for the most part, are using stash yarn. So I'm excited to sort of get some things out of stash. And and we will see, because I'll be going to Barcelona in November. Also just, you know, trying to figure out the tariff situation and how yarns are going to be affected. Or actually, I'll be going to Rhinebeck too in October. So probably October, November is when we'll see some more yarn coming in. And then we'll see how the numbers end up going at the end of the year. So I'm actually feeling pretty good about those numbers, especially given that it was a pretty slow start to the year when it comes to knitting, and I've really only just started to finish some garments. So I'm really excited to finally get sort of my garment knitting mojo back and see what I'm able to work up for the rest of the year. And that's all I have for you all today. Thank you for sticking around this really, really long episode. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. As always, please let me know what you have been working on while you are catching up. I know that I often work on different projects when I'm catching up with my friends, or maybe if you're doing something else. Are you cleaning your house? Are you baking? What are you doing? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you excited to knit any of these patterns or try out some of these patterns? Are you currently knitting any of these patterns or yarns or whatever it might be? As always, all of the descriptions and all that is, or project pages is in the description, I should say, but any additional questions you might have, feel free to drop them. And I think I will leave you here. I do have one more episode this month, which will be a chatty vlog. So it is going to be a longer one, so I'm warning you. I've already edited the majority of it. It'll probably end up being about 45 minutes in the end. But I walk you through a weekend in my life, and really just chat you through how I prioritize and make progress on my knitting when I tend to have a lot of whips going at one time. So kind of my thought process in terms of how I approach being a sort of polyamorous knitter, not a monogamous knitter, and how I still manage to stay on task. And especially because you all know I do quite a bit of sample knitting and test knitting, and how I manage to hit those deadlines without stressing myself out. So I hope that you enjoy that one. And if that's not something that you might be interested in, then I guess I will see you in next month for the next project recap episode. Until then, be sure to take care of yourselves, your loved ones, and each other, and I'll see you next time. Bye.